The trade battle continues between the U.S. and China as both countries impose higher tariffs.
United States and China, they're in a trade war.
The world is watching, factories are buzzing, borders tightening, and billions of dollars are hanging in the balance. At the center of it all, one man and one policy, President Donald Trump and his tariffs. But behind the politics and price tags lies a deeper danger.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
Could an economic war spiral into a real one? This is the story of Trump's tariffs, their global shockwaves, and how they may be laying the groundwork for something far more destructive. But what are tariffs really? And why are they causing panic in boardrooms, headlines in global markets, and hardships on ordinary families across the world? Let's begin answering all questions and take a deep insight on what's coming next from these trade wars. Tariffs, in the simplest terms, are taxes imposed on imported goods. When a country like the United States decides to impose tariff, it makes foreign products more expensive. And what's the idea? To make homegrown alternatives more attractive, revive domestic manufacturing, and reduce reliance on other nations. Sounds patriotic, but the real story is much more complex. During his presidency, Donald Trump positioned himself as the defender of the American worker. He accused countries like China, Mexico, and Canada of cheating the United States in trade deals.
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe.
He announced that these were so-called reciprocal tariffs on imports from about 90 nations that are above a 10% across-the-board tax applied to all imports to the US. He described the day as Liberation Day.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
Trump aimed to reduce the trade deficit between the US and other countries. Now the question comes, what is trade deficit? A trade deficit occurs when a country buys more goods and services than it sells. This means America is the foremost nation to have the largest number of imports, and many countries are totally dependent on it. The new tariff policy could largely impact many businesses and lead to a major crash down. But this tariff policy had taken another turn towards China. Tariffs on Chinese imports began at 54%, then 90%, then a staggering 145%. It was an economic blitz. China struck back, slapping 125% tariffs on $33 billion worth of US exports. The retaliation hit hard. Prices for everything from electronics to clothing shot up. Supply chains broke, Wall Street wobbled, and globally, fear took root. Then the unexpected. Trump hit pause, a 90-day freeze on new tariffs. He said to give space for negotiations, but China remained excluded from exemptions, and the pressure didn't let up. Smartphones, chips, and consumer electronics were given a brief break, only to be brought back into scope days later. Trump's own officials gave conflicting statements. Was this strategy or chaos? But this isn't just about trade. Behind the tariffs is something far more ominous: the rise of two global superpowers locked in a broader confrontation. US-China trade has slowed to a crawl. Consumers are paying more, businesses are cutting costs, and the global economy has lost an estimated 1% of GDP due to disrupted trade flows. History has shown us that global economic tension often precedes global conflict. In the 1930s, the Great Depression triggered protectionist policies like the US Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which worsened economic conditions and fractured alliances. Just a decade later, the world was at war. And to our surprise, Singapore's PM has given a little hint about
The
it.
last time the world experienced something like this was in the 1930s. Trade wars escalated into armed conflict and eventually the Second World War.
Today we see a similar pattern, rising nationalism, shaking cooperation and economic confrontation turning personal. And what's the cost? Jobs lost, prices up, tensions rising, nearly $1,300 more tax per household, and all of it boiling under the surface of a fragile world order. Most of all, the message being sent to the world is this: negotiation through economic firepower. And when money becomes a weapon, peace becomes a gamble. I'm not saying a world war is inevitable, but I'm saying that history whispers, and right now it's speaking loud and clear. Trade wars may start at ports and factories, but if mishandled, they can end in places far darker. History is watching. Are we listening?